Alright, I hope there's no shadows here, but I want to show you the difference between this second prototype and this third prototype. This is the one I used for most of the carving that I've done, and also the bow drills and all this other stuff. After carving and watching the videos and looking at this and thinking about it, I made a revision to the tip. As you can see, the tip is more of a blended. It's brought down a little bit. It's actually thinned a little bit better than this one. It is a little bit finer tip. And it's actually narrow here. And I brought the Scandi up a little bit this way. So this is on an angle a little bit more, which defined this part here a little bit better and created a lot better carver because the tip can get into those tight spaces, and you'll be able to see that when I carve that net needle here in a moment. But those are the revisions. This is revision 3, the third major revision anyway, to this concept. So with that said, let's get to carving. We're going to carve that needle right there. Bit twisted and got knots in it. Alright, the key is, this is a modification from the last one. I narrowed it here and brought this a little bit. It was almost straight here, but I brought this point up a little bit, narrowed the tip down, had a finer point on the tip. All I had in the shop in 2" 3/16 was some CPM D2, so this is D2 steel. But I'm not really looking for how well it holds an edge, which I know my heat treat on this one was just fantastic. So I've been playing with this knife off camera for a couple of days. I actually finished that net needle that I started with the other knife, and so I thought maybe I would start a new net needle and just see how this tip is better. I already know it's better. It's more of a carving tip than the other one was. So the next thing to do is to do it in 01 and see how well the tip holds up. But before I do that, I want to make sure there's no more other modifications I want to make on this. And I'm pretty sure that the 01 is going to hold up as well as the D2. D2 has a bad reputation of chipping, which this one has not chipped. And I mean, you can see in the video there, this is red oak too, by the way, so it's not soft wood. But that tip, that change I made on that tip, boy, I tell you what, it just did wonders for this. How it just gets in there and just hogs the wood. Gets in there and does that fine finesse carving that the other tip just couldn't do. I mean, well, it did it, but it was very difficult. But this one, I mean, it's a dream to use. And you still have this very pronounced part here. So you have the width here. So your splitting power is still right there in the middle of the blade. And I'll show you in a minute how well that works when you're splitting wood without using a baton, or when you're not using a baton, just like you would use a parang. But you can see how well that shape of that tip, that little tanto part there, gets in there and just removes that material like it's nothing. One of the reviewers has the old style, which doesn't have this part here. It just has the part down here, or one of the two. It only has two of these curves. He says it's like having two tips. And I said, well, the one that I'm using has three tips, because these two here acts like a tip as well, and then you have the actual tip of the blade. And you see already in just a few minutes this net needle is well on its way of finishing. Now if it was just split like before without cracking or splitting in the wrong direction, when I take it down to the right size, then you'll have a functional net needle in just a matter of minutes. And that's the idea, is create a tool that creates other tools easily. See, when you get your hand close to where you're carving, you have a lot more control and you can do these precise cuts without fear of the knife going in a direction that you don't want it to go and hitting flesh. What you're trying to avoid at all cost is to not get into the flesh. Alright. Alright, so we're in pretty deep there. Let's see if I can thin this down. Hopefully when I thin it down, it will be through. Alright, let's see how well this is gonna separate this away. Red oak is bad about splitting where you don't want it to split. But that's what I got. See, that's the theory. And when you split it, you're almost through. You can come back from the other side. That tip is narrow enough to get in there and really remove that material. Like so. I really think we're getting very close to having an exceptional survival knife here. See how that tip drills? And you're talking about going through some fireboards. Now the only thing to do is test it for durability and using 01. I think I'm going to have to go to a different type of steel. I think 01 is going to be the good steel because 01 has never let me down on anything before. And it's my favorite go-to steel. Wait a minute. fibers there. Allergies are bad today. There we go. What's doing this because that blade is already through the wood, so get this hand over here if you're not careful. So now it's just a matter of tidying it up, and this tip will go in there just like so and twist because it is so fine. It's a fine tip, yet it's strong. So that's what I was looking for anyway. See how it gets in there in that tight spot. Like so. And now it's just a matter of, you can see how that, I'll get in there and show you how much better this is at an angle like this. Especially on the power feathers and stuff that you have to do. You still have that sweet spot there to take care of your finesse carving. So anyway, that kind of gives you an idea that it's a lot better carver. that style of tip. And take that little needle all the way down to as fine as you want it. And on the back side, see that finer tip, you can get in there and in those tight spots like that and twist. Well, that's a very rough needle, but it will show you that. And this is red oak, folks. This is not soft material. This is very dense material, seasoned dried red oak. So if it do it with this, then it'll do it with the species of wood that you want to do it with. It's sure making a lot of noise. Motorcycles. Sorry about that. Noisy neighbors. See how that tip gets in there, that tight spot, and that angle is just right to carve that out with that tanto point. Tanto is not just for defensive. It can also be used for other things too. See there? Okay, I think I proved my point with the tip. Let me show you how another benefit of narrowing this down does. Doing feathers, and you have the thumb ramp here. You want to use your tip of your blade, and this angle, the way this angle is, it actually leads the material into where you're cutting. So instead of a straight cut, this is actually a curved cut. So it actually is easier to do feathers, even with material like this, which is red oak. So if you use your thumb for support, you can have a lot more control and get those real fine feathers. See that? Because you're just pushing straight down instead of trying to angle your wrist at an odd angle. Your wrist is straight and it locks easier. So you have a lot more control. And the way this is shaped, your material is led into it. like so. Let's see if I can zoom in, maybe get that a little bit tighter. See how the material is riding up against that little bump right there? See that? You get those real fine curls. And your wrist is locked because it's straight instead of trying to use it like this. I don't know if I can get the camera or not. But your wrist is straight, okay? So that's another benefit of creating that angle and narrowing this tip down. And the weight of this knife, even though it is D2 steel, is the same as the other one. It's about 14 ounces. So still 3/16, still has the bow divot, and I did away with the hollow pins. I never really liked the hollow pins. They never was hot spots, but I just can't see tying your knife to a spear. And also, if you wanted to do that, then there's other ways of doing it without having holes in your knife. And we'll do a demonstration or a video of that process at some point. Probably somebody else is doing a evaluation of this knife will do one. But as you can see, in just a matter of seconds, less a minute or at the most, you can have some very fine feathers. And of course, with a 90-degree spine, just like the other one, you have some fluff there. If you wanted to do a fire, let's see if I can get this ferro rod. This is not a very good ferro rod. There. It's a matter of moments. Once those catch. I don't know what it catches. Like so. So that's the purpose of feathers and fluff and stuff, is to use ferro rods and things like that. Instead of having to use a flame, you can use something that's got creates a spark instead of a flame. The other benefit of changing this tip is changes the place where the other benefit of changing this tip to a narrow tip and changing this at an angle instead of this part being straight like in the one before this is that it changes your point of contact when you're trying to split wood without a baton. So instead of out here on the tip, which you have no weight, because the closer you are to your weight is in the center. So this has this part as your part of contact instead of this part. So when you're trying to split kindling, then you're using that part. It's actually easier. So that was another thing that I saw when I was doing the R&D on the other style of knife, is it was difficult to do that. More difficult than it should have been. So this way is is a lot easier. Again, your splitting power is right there. Such as batoning or whatever you want to do, it's right there. So that's another benefit. I think these changes have really enhanced the knife considerably, especially in the carving department, because in a survival situation, you're going to want a blade that can create other tools for you. And a big part of that is carving. So you want a blade that's got a tip that can carve. And so that's the reason I made these modifications, is to have a better carving tip. So R&D continues. Just out here wheeling on a stick, just seeing how much control you have with this blade. It being 3/16, you still want to be able to control your cuts. You can see how fine those are. I mean, those are just like paper thin. It's almost fluff. So you want a blade that you can hog off material and yet do that fine carving as well. That you can almost see through that. And yet when you get on that sweet spot, it just holds the material there and just cuts it off. Do that 90-degree spine just like the other one. It'll remove bark in just a matter of seconds. So I really like those adjustments. I think I need to clean up the grind lines a little bit, but I think that is a significant improvement. So even with all the, talking about D2 steel, I mean, I'm not evaluating the steel, but this is the D2 like I was talking about. And even through all of that, it's still very sharp, just like the old one would be. You know, I showed the old one, it would shave as well. So D2, I mean, I don't know if it gets a bad rap or what, but this is CPM D2. I don't know if there's a difference between CPM and regular D2. I just never have messed with D2 that much. But this heat treat on this one I did just very quickly. I did this as I was doing other things. I made this knife and did the heat treat on it, and it turned out it should be right around 60, 59, 60 Rockwell hardness according to the temper chart I used. So and as you can see through the hacking on that red oak that I've done that for the last 2 or 3 days that I've been trying this knife out. There's no chips, dings, or dents or anything on the edge, and it's held an edge very well. At least as good as the 01. And my 01, I hadn't seen anything yet that I like better. I mean, one benefit of D2 is it's stainless, or right, just about as close to stainless as you can get. Yeah, I'm really liking that tip. I really like the way that blade feels. You get out there on that tip and just really do some finesse carving. And that little bump right there, you'd be amazed at how much benefit those 2 bumps right there gives you. And then you got the straight edge there, and then another straight, and the curves. So why have a knife that just has one straight edge when you have 1, 2, 3 points, a curve, a belly, a straight area, and a straight area. Now that, to me, is what a knife should do. It should give you more options than just one. Or a straight edge and then a belly. I mean, two options. This way you got bellies here, you got bellies there. I'm talking about a skinning tip. I mean, how much better can you get than that for a skinning tip? I mean, your hand's out of the way. That skin is not going to ride up that far because it hits that right there, and it's going to start slicing. And that does on that bark. See that bark? That's another thing that you can use the tip for, is peeling bark. There. I mean, this is winter, so bark is not going to peel very well, but kind of gives you an idea how well the bark would peel. You have a lot of control. So if this was springtime and this was willow, that is all you'd have to do right there. Split it down, just peel it apart like an orange. Yeah, 3/16 knife, and it handles like it's, I don't know, a small little carver maybe. But yet it's got all of the lengths and the thickness and everything to be a good camp knife or survival knife or last ditch knife, what are you going to call it? Really liking it. I really think that this is going to be something special right here. I mean, I've never seen a knife yet that does all of this much as well as this knife does. The Master Woodsman is good at what it does, but it wasn't designed to be a survival knife. It was designed to be a woodsman's knife, like the title says. It would probably get the job done, but this one will probably do a lot more survival tasks easier than the Master Woodsman would. Alright, well, I think I've done enough video on this. So, you guys get in the backyard, whittle on a stick, test your knives out, see how well they work for you. If you do, be sure and take plenty of Band-Aids and lots of knives. We'll catch you again soon.